All right. Well, welcome. We've got Coach Mark McGrann, head coach at Halifax Trojans Swim Club, with us today, grabbing a coffee, grabbing a chat. How you doing today, Mark?
I'm doing good. What about
Good.
yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well as you can be, living in isolation, right? That's what we do nowadays.
Yes, a little bit different.
A little bit different indeed. Um, so thanks for doing this. I mean, haven't done too many of these so far, and you're the first coach that I'm talking to, so breaking a little bit of new ground here. I thought, who better to start with than somebody I worked with for 5 years and somebody who almost killed me in the sense of me trying to get you here. Those 5 months, I think it was a 5 or 5.5 months trying to work through the whole immigration process.
Right, right.
Um, so like I just want to kind of take a little bit of a walk down memory lane first, man. Just a little bit about you. I know that you got your degree in 2002 in architecture, so obviously that's a natural transition into coaching, right? Definitely the
That's
way to
right.
go. So you graduated and then you decided to get into coaching in 2003, and you worked with the Lisburn City Swim Club for 10 or 11 years from '03 to 13. And then you made the jump, came to Canada, came to Chena, which was awesome. For me, I know I was hiring a great coach, but also got a really good friend out of it. So that was a double win for me. You spent 5 years with us before moving on to take on the head coaching job at Halifax with the Halifax Trojans, and this is your second year. Obviously, a weird second year to say the least. Um,
Hmm.
so that's a lot of the stuff going on right now with you. As far as the story, I guess, or the Coles notes. But tell us a little bit about you. Like, how'd you get started, man? You got started. You were a swimmer. Came through that way because architecture to coaching doesn't seem like a normal transition. So I figure there's some swimming backstory there.
Yeah, there's definitely some interesting U-turns along the way. I think, my dad has always been really sporty, so we just got into every sport that we possibly could. Swimming seemed to be, it was we loved it. So I've got two brothers, two sisters. My brothers were really big into swimming, so we had a great time with it, and it took me probably until 15, 16 until I kind of like veered away from the sport. I guess I just got a little bit tired of the, the grind, and I wasn't really getting the results anymore. So the goal was always to be an architect, and like that was my passion from my earliest memories. I had an uncle who was an architect, and he was kind of like the guy who I aspired to be. And after university, I had a call from my coach to come back and do a little bit of, just basically help out a little bit. So that helping out turned into a few years of, and it ended up being quite a big part-time role. And in between, I was doing a lot of private coaching and everything else. And I was intending to go back to architecture, but every 6 months that passed, it was getting further and further away. And I think I just lost a little bit of drive, maybe a little bit of confidence to go back and actually do that career. So at a certain point, I think I decided to really give coaching a proper shot. I applied to do my senior coaching. It was like a brand new course that they were running in Dublin, Ireland, and it was like a pilot course. I get onto that, and from then, I kind of always thought, coaching has like could really be an interesting journey. I kind of started getting excited. I started watching a lot of international coaches and becoming familiar with the international scene because Irish swimming, especially back then, was so far behind and so amateurish. Now, there were some excellent swimmers, but there just wasn't a great um, structure, I suppose, great model for swimmers to kind of like do it as a proper career and be professionals. So yeah, I was just excited to try and move and try somewhere else, and Canada was like top of the list. And yeah, I'll forever be grateful that I got that call from yourself. So thank you.
My pleasure, man. Thank you for coming. I still remember we did your first Skype interview because I was in Quebec City during Canada Games in 2013. And I
Right.
went and I found a Boston pizza and I sat there on the computer and the woman kept bringing me waters, saying, "Do you want anything?" I said, "No, I'm good," as I was talking to you. And I still remember you sent me your this 2-page document. I didn't even ask for it, but it was like a coaching philosophy about how you view swimming and how you view athletes and athlete development. And I was sitting in my parents' place who live close to Quebec City or close enough. And I remember my mom asking me, she's like, what's wrong? You seem kind of stunned right now. I said, well, I just read this 2-page document from this guy that I want to hire that I could have written myself. Like it was that spot on. And I think that was the clincher for me. I knew at that point I wanted to hire you. Now, had I known all the work that was going to go into it, I don't know. No, just kidding. I definitely would have pursued it, but it worked out quite well. And I really enjoyed it. But I wanted to ask you, and I think it's important to share because you said Canada was high on your list. I'm sure you were looking at other opportunities like maybe the UK, things like that, or Europe. But what was it about Canada? What was the draw to coming and working in the Canadian swimming system or coaching in Canada? What was it um, that kind of pulled you or drew you to coming to Canada?
Yeah, so honestly, the first thing that really came to mind was it didn't have a lot to do with swimming. I was thinking I'm going to kind of go somewhere and have this new start, this new life, and it was all the information that I had about Canada as a country. So in terms of what it can offer. I didn't look too heavily into climate, but that's okay because I was heading to Vancouver, so there was no big issues there for me. But it was really about the people. I got an aunt and uncle and some cousins who live in Vancouver as well. So I got to see them probably once every couple of years when they came back. I had never been to Vancouver, but everyone only ever told me good things about the city and about Canada in general. So I knew it was a population that were really friendly, really open, very warm, and I kind of related that to like the same kind of people that we have in Ireland. So to me, it was a really good fit. Um, it was somewhere that I thought I could learn a lot. Canadian coaches are known for being highly educated and particularly good on the theory side of the sport, and I just really wanted to come and learn. I was just starting out. I still see it that way, and an opportunity came up, and yeah, it was almost too good to be true. At the same time, there were some opportunities that were a little bit closer to home, but I just thought, if I'm going to do this, why not go to the one that's kind of the furthest reach and try from there.
So on that note, I got to ask you because I think for a lot of people, I think about we've got young swimmers we deal with all the time that are graduating, going off to university, and just picking and choosing and leaving home. Like that's a massive step to leave your country, your family, and everything. And I know you have a few family members in or around the Vancouver area. I think you have an uncle or something like that. But you're really moving far from home. You're moving away from your friends, your family, like the life that you had set up, and that's not a decision taken lightly, right? There's a bit of fear, I guess, or uncertainty with that. Like, how was that for you? Was it a little bit nerve wracking, even closer to the date where you were actually departing Ireland?
It was. I don't think it really set in until I was able to make the announcement to my club at the time, Lisburn City, and they did a bit of a leaving party, and that was really really nice. But it was just kind of driving home that night. I thought, okay, so I have to go now. So
Yeah.
there's no turning back. Um, but at the same time, honestly, I had done as much research as I possibly could. I checked out the Chena program. I felt that I had read every possible newspaper cutting and internet information about yourself and about how you run the club, some of the achievements, some of the swimmers that were in the program. So I felt that I was going into a program, and obviously we talked not just during the interview, we had a conversation that before I arrived in Vancouver because of some delays with the visa and so forth. So I really came into it feeling that I knew pretty well. I was really excited to get going. I was really excited to start. I didn't know how it was going to go. Like I thought I was open to the possibility that it could have been a huge failure and that I might be, packing my bags within 12 months and returning home. I just didn't know, but I was just going to come and give it my best shot.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was just trying to keep an open mind about it all, and I just also knew it was a hell of an opportunity. It was a great opportunity. The coaches that I was working with in Ireland, the colleagues within my own club, and coaches of a similar peer group from other clubs in Ireland, um, they didn't have the same opportunity. It just didn't come their way. I think I was fortunate in a lot of ways, and I thought I'm not going to let this one slip by.
So if you were talking, going back and talking to yourself as a young coach, or talking to a young coach right now, um, I guess it sounds like the advice would be put yourself out there, right? Take a
Yeah,
shot, right?
exactly. And I think obviously at this point, I get the chance to work with other young coaches on the Trojan staff, and sometimes I can see that little bit of hesitancy, when it comes to like going for an opportunity or an initiative that's out there, and maybe there's some self doubt, and it's natural, we all have it. But my job is to try and give that a little bit of a nudge these days to say, hey, listen, you can do this. You've definitely shown like all the attributes that is needed. And sure, maybe you're lacking a little bit of experience, but what better way to gain it? Put your name in there and see what happens.
Do you find that young coaches are a bit hesitant or lacking that confidence? I feel like I see that. Or it could go, I
Yeah, I
mean,
think
I should say, sorry, it kind of goes both ways. You either have, they're young and very, very confident, but a lot of uncertainty. I feel like I see that a little bit.
right. So the easiest way, I suppose, to get anywhere is to kind of grow into a role or have these very gradual steps, and that's kind of like the perfect system, because you get fresh challenges, but yet you've got that level of confidence and experience and expertise. And unfortunately, life just doesn't deal the cards that way.
Hmm.
In a coaching role, you might be doing something and having some, you might be able to evolve within that role or within that program or that part of the program, and then an opportunity comes along where you know in your mind it seems like 3 or 4 levels above.
Hmm.
And I think that's what stops maybe some coaches for kind of aiming for that. So yeah, I think it's just, my message is probably just, you'd be surprised how well things can work out if you just have a go at it. And probably the same for the athletes.
I agree. It's funny. I think back to a piece of advice I got before I took my first assistant head coaching role. So it was the summer of 2006. And I was looking at the role as assistant head coach to go work with Sean Baker at Hamilton Aquatic Club. And a coach said to me, I said, well, I'm nervous. I've never worked with athletes of this age or this ability level. And he just said to me, he said, it's coaching. It's like you need to be you. They're just older, so they need more and it's faster. But stay who you are as a coach, regardless of the age or the level. You have to be you and the person that you are. And I've carried that advice throughout my entire career. I just think that was phenomenal advice that was given to me. And I really think that that rings true for any coach of any group or of any level is just be you and adjust your training to who you're working with, right? So it's kind of interesting. So like, and being able to adapt. So I wanted to touch on that because when you came to China, so what we were joking about earlier, it took to finish your LMO and all the immigration paperwork, it took about 5 months. And it was a really
Mhm.
interesting, it's kind of a funny arrival in Canada. So it was 5 months where I was covering off the youth program. So you were hired to be the youth program director. So working with our top 11 to 13-year olds, we'll say, in the club at the time, and to come into the role. But because of everything got delayed, so I ran the group for, I think it was 5 months, and we got everything approved and you were able to show up. But at that year, BC decided to move provincial championships in January of 2014 to the end of January.
Right,
So that it used
right.
to be run in the beginning of March, and then we moved it to January. So you flew, I think you arrived on, if I'm not mistaken, it was like a Thursday night or a Wednesday night, and then the next morning, like we stayed at my place. The next morning, we got on a bus and drove to Kamloops. So for somebody
Yes.
coming from Northern Ireland to Vancouver, thinking, okay, weather's okay, but then we go to Kamloops at the end of January, you froze your butt off. It was it wasn't the most positive experience for you dealing with the cold, right? So you were thrust right into it. So you came into that and you ran the rest of that season. So you only really got a half season that 13, 14 year got the half year. And then you had a full season in 14, 15. And then an interesting thing happened, and this is goes to being able to adjust and adapt to the fly. It was August of 2015. You had just finished your first full year, a year and a half as a youth program director, and you had all the work done. You were prepped, you were ready, you had your templates, you had everything set up to go for these groups in this age group. And then Jim got the head coaching job in Campbell River and departed. And I sat down and I talked to you, and you had the choice, obviously, to stay and do what you were prepped to do or make the switch. And you decided to take the role, make the switch into the senior assistant role and work with the senior athletes and work with me with the performance guys. and have to regroup and readjust all of your templates and everything for the season that was starting in about 3 weeks at that point.
Right.
So that was a bit of a crazy time for you to make that adjustment and go into a different age group, and a different role in the club on the fly like that. Uh, how was that for you making that switch?
Actually, I had completely forgotten about that, and it kind of is a good example of what we were just talking about a minute ago, because I really was that was the perfect. I had the perfect platform to step up and take the next role, and even though that was the case, I still had like many doubts about the whole thing. I think maybe part of it was because I felt like I was prepared for the first time. So, like you said, I arrived mid-season. I think the goal was to try and learn about the club as quickly as possible, understand the swimmers, kind of build a rapport with the swimmers and yourself and the board and the parents and the families. So that was kind of the goal, right off the bat, which, even then that was challenging, but really exciting. And then for the first time, I felt like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to actually try and, show what I've learned in the last 6 months, and then also bring what I had developed over, the 10 years or so that I was somewhat involved in coaching. And all of a sudden, I just felt like the rug had been pulled from underneath, and I had to kind of scramble and start again. But
Yeah.
it wasn't that it was like a backward step or anything like that. It was a great opportunity. It was really flattering, and I really wanted to do it. I just thought, right, this is probably the first time I'm going to have sole control of a group of, I suppose there were probably 15, 14, 14 to about 18 years old, and just a different dynamic. And of course, I quickly learned that there's so many different personalities within that age group. But it was also like probably some of the best times I've ever had, on a pool deck. And you know, once we had talked about it probably for the second time. So the first time we chatted, like this is the opportunity. I took it away. I had a thought. I think about it. We came back and we had a chat about it. And went for some food, and it just again, it just felt like I just felt so lucky at that point. So a little bit of clear thought, and I realized what the opportunity was, and it was great. And I gotta say, the support was there from day one. So I always felt like if things were going sideways, or if there was something I didn't understand, or if I felt that I just needed a bit of help with something, I always knew that I could go to yourself, go to some of the other coaches, go to the board. Like I always felt that a really great level of support from everyone in the program. So it worked out.
It worked out really well. And then you were in that role for 3 years. I know we did 2016 Olympic trials together. 2016 Summer Nationals, we almost won that men's banner. Came up just a little bit short. James and I were reminiscing about that a couple days ago, just talking about that run that summer, in
Yeah,
2016 in Edmonton. So it led to some pretty good success. We had some good years over those 3 years. I think back to, obviously 16 trials, 2017 we had a great nationals in Victoria. 2018 with people on teams and things like that. And then an opportunity came up, and I know from talking to you, there was, I think, wanting to run a program and be a head coach had always been there, but once again coming to like taking that step, almost like taking the step to move from Ireland and taking that step to make another big move and take over and run a program. Um, and I think I remember sitting down at one point with you and just saying like you are 100% ready to do this job. You've been ready to do this job for a while. But you finally said, okay, I'm gonna take that leap, and you made the move to Halifax. And I remember telling you that Halifax is a phenomenal place, great city, a really
yeah,
great program. Like there's a lot of positives there. Not to mention, I think you're 4 hours closer to home. Ironically enough, still in Canada, but half the distance to home.
yeah.
So you made that move, and you went out there to start the 2018-19 season. This is your second year. So how has it been? Like walk me through that, like the adjustment from being, either a youth program director or assistant senior head coach to being the head coach and having your staff and being in that role, and also the difference of moving from BC to Nova Scotia and just a different part of Canada, and I always say that different parts of Canada are different versions of Canada and different swimming cultures and things like that. So just walk me through that transition into being the head coach, running the program, running your staff, and then a whole new province and learning a whole new way of swimming, because it has to be different than it is in BC.
Yeah, wow, that's okay. So there's
So
three
there's a
things
lot
there.
there. There's a lot there. I'm sorry, I just kind of threw it all at you.
That's
Um,
good. That's okay. So let me start off with the transition. Now, this is was kind of unplanned, and in terms of like the transition that I had. But again, it seemed to work out for the best because by the nature of the Chena program, you guys use like well, back then it was like 5 or 6 different pools throughout the season, probably somewhere similar today. And with that, you had to essentially trust like your coaches, your staff, to run like almost little mini satellite programs within the umbrella. Of course, we all tried to like work off like a central spine, and we try to use similar terminology and work within the same message. But there was a lot of autonomy, which was amazing, sometimes a little bit daunting, but it meant that in a way I felt sometimes the way I had probably more control over the program than I would have had. Say we had our own 50-meter facility where we had the best pool time. We could really utilize it with many different groups and have like almost our entire team of coaches around that pool deck.
mhm.
So that would be a situation that we had sometimes, but that was a chance for you to have like eyes on everything at the same time. So for the most part, we had to be creative, and you had to kind of switch practices, or have someone cover yours. You could come and visit one of mine or one of the other coaches. So I kind of felt that system was kind of useful for an assistant coach aspiring to be a head coach and having like a little bit of a step along the way.
Mhm.
Always as an assistant coach, I was kind of like torn between two different ideas. So yeah, you're right. I always wanted to be a head coach, but I didn't know which of those two. I saw like in my head two kind of pathways to get there. One was to go to a huge club,
Mhm.
one of the try and find one of the biggest in terms of numbers and membership, with amazing levels of success at age group and senior, and a lot of quantity. So I thought I got to then try and become an assistant head coach in a program like that, to then potentially go on and be a head coach in my own program. And the other way was I thought to go into a very small club with limited resources, could have been anywhere, learn how to be a head coach in an environment whereby potentially there wasn't the same demand from the membership in terms of, I suppose, getting everything right from the start, and just making sure that every box was ticked from communication and administration right the way through to athlete performance. So in the end, I honestly, I kind of, when it came to China, I wanted to honor like the terms that we kind of talked about from the very start. So that's why I was there for almost 5 years, and every single year, I always felt like I was getting more and more and more from it. So my role, I had two different roles kind of through my duration, but within that, there was, you know, we were fortunate you were able to bring me to like tons of different opportunities and different levels of meets, and I got to meet a lot of fascinating people through conferences and just being on the pool deck all over the country. So it was just a constant learning curve, which was perfect. And at a certain point, I think I just thought I have to be, probably seen as being ambitious, and get my name out there, and, get some experience and sitting in front of 3 or 4 or 5 strangers and selling myself as a potential head coach. So I thought I needed real experience in that, and as much preparation as you can do. And we would talk about it, and we'd have coffees over it. You don't really know how it's going to go until you're actually like sweating and sitting on that seat.
Yeah,
So,
we always talk about that. You don't really know until you're in the big chair, right?
right,
And then it
right.
has a bit of a different feel to it.
Yeah. So whenever I had the opportunity to come to Halifax, I mean, I was over the moon, and I'll be honest, I had a few nerves at the same time because I realized it was coming into a program with outstanding history, great pedigree. You told me about, I'd never been, but you told me about Halifax and how, what a fantastic place it was, and you told me about the program as well. And I heard from other coaches, and I didn't want to mess it up. That was
Yeah.
one of the thoughts in my head. But also, I was really, really driven, and I was so excited. You know, I couldn't, I couldn't wait to get, I couldn't wait to walk into the office and just see the pool and get to meet the swimmers, and I get to meet my colleagues, and just kind of see it from a different set of eyes. So, um, the first, I think, well, I came mid August, and it was kind of like obviously off season, so I had a little bit of time, which was great. So I had a bit of time to get to learn the city. I didn't have a car for the first couple of weeks, so I kind of biked around, and it was beautiful weather. Everyone was really nice. I had a great welcome, and people were showing me around, and you know, I felt like it was a really you don't always have that chance to kind of like feel your way into a role or a job, but both yourselves, Chena, and also the Trojans were, you know, were really really helpful in giving me that little bit of time to kind of understand what I needed to do. We chatted quite a few times before I departed about, you know, some of the main things that I had to establish, and then just working with yourself for a few years and some of my previous head coaches as well, but particularly with my time in China, um, I just realized there was some priorities we had to get, you know, I had to deal with. I had to really get some things established, you know, right from the off, particularly the schedule, pool time, looking at the staff, and then and then sitting back, and whenever I talked to a lot of coaches before I actually made the move, a lot of them had the same advice. So a lot of them said, listen, just try and absorb as much information as you can, watch the program, evaluate, um, identify areas that you want to try and have an impact in and you want to try and improve. And there was definitely lots and lots of strengths in the program when I came here. But you also said something about 10 minutes ago about advice you had from Sean Baker
Mm.
with being yourself. And I think that's really, really important because in the first year, I always felt that I was kind of like managing something, a vessel that it was created by a lot of other really, really skilled and excellent people, but it didn't really have my personality stamped onto it.
Hmm.
And to be truly passionate about something, especially from a management point of view, I think that's something that you really want to establish. You want to have that stamp to say this reflects, you know, the person that you are and what you're trying to achieve, and then you can really get some momentum going.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, and that's the thing. Like I always say to people is that when if you're going to go take over a program, because this is one of the things I go back and I look at my time at Chena, and I came in and we talked about different coaches. Some coaches are afraid to take that leap or they're a little bit insecure, and some are a bit cocky and brash. I fit into the cocky and brash category. Uh, I came out and was like, yeah, this is my opportunity. I moved across the country from Ontario to BC, and I had this job, and I said, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do such a great job. And I was full of ego and confidence and all those things, and I came in really I don't want to say aggressive,
Hot.
but it's hot. I came in hot, and I was like, oh, people are going to be so happy. I'm just going to change this and change that, and I only really evaluated things for a short period of time, and I changed so many things, and they were I had the right idea and the right concept, but I really just went too much too soon. So that's why my advice to people is like take a step back, really evaluate, observe, and see what's going on before you come in and just say, I have all the answers. I'm going to change it all. So I know that advice I give people is that's something I learned because um, safe to say I upset quite a few people in the club because they're used to a program, they're used to things, and you want to put your
Right,
stamp on it, but it morphs over time. Um,
right.
and even if you look at when you arrived at Chena to when you left, it continues to morph. And I think that swim clubs are a living thing almost, where they're going to modify and change and adapt and grow over time. And having been in a program at Chena for 10 years now, it is very, very different, and it's different every year. So
Yeah.
that's always advice I give to people, because like don't do what I did, coming in super aggressive. I think that's why I give good advice now. But you're right, there is so much autonomy at Chena. I think right now we run at a 6 pools in 3 different cities. And
Right.
at any given time, I know that you've got your 4 full-time coaches are at 4 different pools at the exact same time. So you do have to have a certain level of autonomy. Now, having been in the role for a couple of years, and being in Halifax, are there certain things from Chena you took with? I know you said there is, but is there something unique about the role that you didn't know? That's, hey, like these are things, a couple of things that I like, or something that's different. Just, I don't know if there's anything different from that you can say to somebody who was an assistant coach or in a really pivotal role in a club, but now you're a head coach, and you almost have to handle things differently or look at things differently. I don't know if there's something specific or any example you have of that.
Yeah. So I've been funny. I've been watching a lot of um, Bob Bowman presentations and interviews over the last couple of weeks, and just he seems to be one of the coaches with the most material available. So I watched a few, and then more pop up and suggestions and so forth. And I was watching another one this morning, and he was talking about the 40-year span of a coach, if they go that far, and kind of the different levels and phases that they go through, from the first 10 years making all of the mistakes to the second decade, when you kind of you've got a whole list of solutions and answers, but you're probably not always choosing the right one until the third decade, when you feel like you've somewhat got it, and you have the right solution for a given challenge or problem. And then the fourth decade that he hasn't actually reached himself yet, I don't think. And he said at that point, it's all about getting creative, and actually sometimes throwing problems for other people, and then seeing how they respond. So I feel like I'm very much, somewhere between the first two phases at the moment, whereby I've learned a lot from mistakes in the assistant role, and also just in the head coach role. And with that, I think with every mistake you make, you really learn a lot about the next time, potentially, whenever that happens. So,
Right. So we've talked a lot about your journey and where you've come from in your coaching career and how you've gotten to where you are. So, I mean, that kind of brings us to where we are today, which is a bit of a messed up situation in the world. And I know how we were the first outbreak here with COVID-19 in BC. We kind of hit pretty hard, especially in North Van with Lynn Valley Long-Term Care Facility and everything like that. And we've
yeah.
had to readjust how we view the world, and what we're doing is swim coaches with no pools. We're struggling to kind of maintain relevance with our members and trying to make sure we're having content. So I know in our situation, we're putting out like daily blasts and weekly content, doing things like this, trying to share swimming stories and having content for our athletes. I'm just wondering where you're at with your club and how things are in Nova Scotia with what content you're able to deliver. What are you able to do with your athletes? Because I think you guys are a lot lower on cases, and it hasn't fully hit, or hopefully it never really fully hits the way it's hit in Quebec and Ontario, for instance, in Nova Scotia. Just wondering how you're doing with that. Like, what are you able to do with your members? What are you able to share with your members? What content is out there? Just give me a rundown. Like, how are you guys doing? Like, are you well, families well, all that stuff, and making sure that everyone's good and healthy. But what do we do now when we don't have pools? I'm assuming you guys aren't swimming, right?
Correct. So the good news is that everyone's doing well, and we are kind of our kind of reality kicked in at about March 15th. So
Mm-hmm.
that's whenever our provincial body, Swim Nova Scotia, effectively suspended, all club operations at that time, and then the facilities closed either the next morning or it was 24 hours later. So we were kind of watching what was going on, especially in Quebec, because this, and also a little bit in BC, but with Quebec, it was kind of closer to home, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and the cases were really, really high. And I've been following the news in BC as of yesterday, and I see that the curve is definitely flattening out, which is looking really good for you guys.
Yeah, we're on the right track, but we got to keep it going. Like, we're
Right.
definitely doing the right things, but we're not out of the woods yet.
Yeah. And for here, I think it's still somewhat unknown, where the spike is going to be. Um, there was kind of higher numbers as of the last couple of days, but then today it was a little bit lower again. People, from what I can see, are doing a really good job, and it's very much a community feel in Halifax anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of people looking out for each other. It feels kind of homely in that respect. It feels like Ireland for me. And I think there's a lot of people are taking on the responsibility, and as far as I can see, they're doing a really great job. In terms of programming and what our club, what we can do with our club, that was an interesting one as well, because I got to understand that every province works with different insurance providers. So there's different guidelines kind of given to different clubs depending on where they are in the country. So it just so happened in Nova Scotia that we really haven't been allowed to do any form of direct coaching for any of our athletes until yesterday, as it happens. But so for the last 2.5 weeks, it's really been the emphasis has been about engaging the members, and trying to make sure that they feel like they're still part of something. There's something where they can interact with different like tasks, and we've done things from like newsletters, of course, to I've got like 6 different lead assistant coaches. They've all kind of been tasked with a different, I guess, a different interactive way of working with the club. So from arts and crafts to quizzes to a coach who was doing memes, is still doing memes, and he even did a TikTok video. And he set the bar so high, he was running around in the forest in his Speedos, diving into puddles. I mean, it was just, I got to show you at some point. We're doing some food nutrition stuff. But the whole point was to try and set up something that was club-wide that can get people involved and engaged. The probably most successful thing we've had so far was we introduced a Zoom at noon
Nice.
initiative. So every Wednesday, so it's going to be tomorrow at noon, all the coaches engage with the swimmers in their groups. And first and foremost, it's really about talking to them, seeing how they are, getting some fun going, watching them interact with each other. Because although everyone's on social media, Snapchat, Instagram, it's not the same thing as having a conversation.
Absolutely.
I think in the situation that we're in, Zoom and some of those other platforms are the closest thing that we can get to actually having an old-fashioned, if you like, chat. So that's actually been really good. It took probably 2 weeks to kind of build some momentum, but I certainly look forward to it every week. That's like, I guess, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and like, one of the things is you really miss interaction with the swimmers and with the other coaches. Same goes for our coaches meetings we do on Zoom. I actually really look forward to just getting in front of the laptop and just seeing everyone and just chatting and talking about how they've been doing, and maybe obviously some club operational things that we're going to try and do for the coming days and coming weeks. In terms of training, the new guidelines are really robust. There's a lot of restrictions, but again, there's an opportunity now to try and develop some training for the club, hopefully. I think overall, the thing I wanted to do whenever I realized what the situation was that I didn't just want to be really reactionary to the whole thing and scramble and start throwing things at the club and the members and the swimmers and like do this, do that, do the other. It was really having a chance to meet with the staff, work with the coaches, think about some of the things that were achievable, some of the things that were a little bit more fun, some diversity, some things that would be enjoyed by a 5-year-old swimmer and a 17-year-old swimmer, and then having something with a little bit more longevity about it. So I think we're getting to the point where we want to bring in some fresh ideas for the next 2 weeks, and that's what we're working on at the moment. And it's been pretty good so far. So in my opinion, the biggest absence from speaking with the swimmers, is the lack of structure.
Hmm.
That's all they know. Structure is like it consumes their life. So they have their school schedule, they have their swim schedule, and everything in between is just like whatever they can fit in.
Hmm.
So there's really very little flexibility between those two main components that take up all of their lives. And those two massive parts are completely removed. So, you know, I would actually really like to try and develop something whereby we were at least offering, we can't mandate it, but it would just be encouraged to offer some structure back into their kind of days. And I think they'll start to feel really good about themselves if they can, commit to that. So that's kind of where I'm at. What about yourself?
Yeah, you know what? I kind of followed the same template. I know at first I was, well, I mean, you know me, I'm a bit, my brain works in weird ways. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit different. So the moment that things started to happen, I was already planning to, I had canceled, for instance, our staging camp for trials about 48 hours before it was recommended to not travel, and make that trip. I'd pulled the plug on it, and I was already looking at adjustments to things. And basically, what I did is I just sat down and I studied the math, the statistics. I know everyone's looking for curves and projections, and I kind of did my own. I know my wife thought I was a bit nuts because I was tracking the data every hour. I would take snapshots of the running tally on the data so I can formulate my own graph. And I know I realize I sound like a complete tool right now, but this is what I did, and I spent about 3 or 4 days just studying the growth curve and the information and listening to health professionals and scientists and avoiding politicians at all costs. Um, but basically, I went that route, and I looked at it, and I at that point I knew because I knew it wasn't going to be, hey, 2 3 weeks, and we're going to get right back at it, and then we're going to go. But I had to wait for things to fall. Like, they're going to cancel trials, are they going to postpone the Olympics, like all those things. And I wanted to have a sustainable content that we could roll out. And I was also maximizing the time we had with March break, right? Because we had that 2 week March break that started right at the start of the shutdown of the pool time. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to have content ready so we can have something sustainable with information, quick hit links, doing video stuff like this, keeping the community strong.
Yeah,
And luckily, I've got a couple of fantastic assistant coaches that are doing a lot of work. And I'm going to steal your idea, Zoom at noon, and just getting, because we've talked about having those group discussions and keeping that community strong. That was the thing that I thought, right? Mental health, keeping the community strong, keeping that interaction, keeping the swimming community, nationwide strong. So we've got, Zoom classes, we'll do yoga classes and things like
right.
that, or coach led workouts. And we're just kind of getting used to the technology and sorting out the kinks, and then doing hits and links and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Doing Chena challenges. I think my first Chena challenge I put out to our club was every day contact a different teammate, and just say, hey, how are you doing? Check in on them, and
yeah,
contact a non teammate, a family member, a friend, somebody from another club, doesn't matter. But if we all check in on each other, then we're doing our part to make sure everyone's doing well, because we've all had our world abruptly disrupted, right?
yeah,
So that's kind of the stuff that I've been doing, and it's organic, right? It's growing and it's changing and it's morphing into what it's going to be. But this is the new normal that we're in. Um,
yeah.
so that's kind of what we're doing, and that's why I wanted to kind of check in with different people and talk to people like yourself, who's across the country dealing with same thing but different, right? Um, so I guess if you had to give a message to either your athletes in your club or your coaches or to any coach or swimmer in the country, or anywhere, just saying, like, what would you say in a time like this? Like, what would be your message of what you'd like to see, even specifically to your swimmers, of, as they're going through this, they've had their swimming taken away. Grade 12 students are going to miss their prom, they're going to miss their grad. Like, there's a lot of things that are important to people that they're not going to get to do. Um, what would be your message to them who are missing their swimming and missing that connectivity?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think there's a lot of coaches even online are discussing and debating that actual topic. And for me, in our current situation, actually going against maybe something that I kind of promote at other times, I actually would encourage the swimmers, especially the swimmers who are very much involved in the competitive stream, and they're they're already getting involved with goal setting and visualizing and setting some pretty lofty goals for themselves in the coming months, years, and so forth. I actually would ask them to take it back a little bit and just, focus on something that you can do really well today and tomorrow, because you know when they start to kind of dwell a little bit on how much time they're losing in the pool, that in itself can be, it's out of their control, first of all. So my message would be, don't try not to stress about it. You know, we're all in this together. There's a lot of great people doing what they can to try and make sure we're going to get back on track as soon as possible. I think, you know, we all have that responsibility. And there are little things that you can do that you would never get the time to do otherwise. I mean, swimmers are probably one of the busiest athletes like on the planet. And, you know, it's so labor intensive. So if you play for, I'm generalizing, but if you play for a sports team, you might have 2-3 practices per week and a game at the weekend or a match at the weekend. And that's that's how much of your life it kind of like involves. But we know for swimming, especially senior athletes, they could be doing 9-10 practices per week with training camps and all the dryland work and nutrition work, and it's never ending. And it's just such a massive amount, a massive demand on the athletes. This is something that actually could really generate a lot of excitement about the return to the pool. It could really give them a chance to reset, you know, like where they evaluate themselves as swimmers. You know, who knows, maybe even for a struggling swimmer, it might give them massive motivation because in their mind, their peers who were ahead of them, the playing field has been leveled somewhat. So it's make the most of it. Make the most of it. Try and be positive. There are so many things, whether it's swim related or completely non-swim related, that can really help you, you know, develop yourself as a person at this moment in time. You know, I mean, I'm excited to see whenever I see the swimmers again, who, you know, if anyone's learned how to play the guitar, for example.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that, you know, I'm looking and I'm thinking about things that I can do myself. And yeah, when else will we get the time to do this? So that part, I think, is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I do have a question for yourself.
Okay.
Didn't want it to be all one-sided here. So
All right.
you're a guy who likes to plan and you like to really think about the program in terms of quads and how it's going to be tailored to certain individuals, especially the ones in your own national group. What, if any, modifications have come to mind already about what you would do for next season, just based on everything that's going on at the moment?
So yeah, I am an obsessive planner. Not so much in my personal life, but in my professional life. So yeah, I have given this a lot of thought. The first thing was right away, this is our off season and we need to treat it as such. And the moment we have water again, we start training. So if we're really lucky and it's June, great, but we're gonna swim through the summer, and it's setting up the kind of rebirth of swimming as we go. So that's the first thing. But the real thing that I've targeted with all of this is an opportunity to work on our weaknesses, things that you would never normally get to address. So what we want to do with our athletes is expand your physical literacy, expand your athleticism, and develop areas that might have been weaknesses, but between swimming 9 or 10 sessions a week and being in the gym and doing your lifting and then doing your yoga and your spin and all the elements that go into it, I really want to emphasize mobility. I want to emphasize just like coordination skills, like different things that you would normally get to do that you can do from your own home. You know me, I always have some kooky and crazy ideas that I throw at my swimmers, and sometimes they give me that look like, geez, man, what are you talking about? That's so strange. And a lot of times I'll try stuff and say, okay, guys, let's never do that again. That was terrible. Um, but yeah, it's about adapting to your situation and realizing that we don't have water, but neither does 99% of the swimming world. So we're all on a level playing field from that perspective. We're fit, and I've got athletes. I got some people who have a rower at home. I got people who are cycling. I got people who are biking. I got people who are kayaking. I've got swimmers that have ordered dry suits to go swim in 4-degree lakes, and everyone's kind of doing their own thing. But it's really, I think, what I want to emphasize with my athletes is that mental preparation, the mental confidence, the little deficiencies in ourselves, and that sort of thing. But we're doing other things like learning about nutrition and fueling yourself, learning how to cook and prep meals for yourself, trying different things. Like, it's just expanding your knowledge base as you go through, but keeping a positive mindset and staying connected. So uh, we find out periodically what things are going to look like as we go through, but we don't know when we're resuming swimming. We don't know when we're going to start racing again. Um, the big thing that I say to people, and this is something that I firmly believe, and maybe I'm wrong, but for somebody like a James Durgossoff or something like that, I'd say be prepared that the next time you race internationally might very well be the Olympics if you are fortunate enough to qualify in 2021. I think when we get back to it, we're going to see a lot more time trials, a lot more regional level meets, a lot of local domestic racing where you have to get up and rehearse your performance and train and compete against local competition because traveling and flying and doing all those things are going to be slower to get started again. And we're not going to want to put ourselves out there again. I don't foresee the situation allowing us to go down and do Pro Series events in America. I just don't see that happening in the immediate future. So you have to get creative in finding your competitions. And I think it caters to what we do. We do a lot of race simulation and local stuff. We don't do a lot of traveling around. We really emphasize the preparation for our competition. So I think from that perspective, we're good. And once we have water, we've got water, and then we'll make the most of it. Depending on when we start, I might have to start off quicker. I'm September, October. I'm probably the slowest starting program in the country. And we really build it up. I mean, what is our saying? Is like we're probably going to have our butts kicked pretty aggressively in the first 3 months of the season, but it'll start to the tide will turn as we get closer to trials and big meets. So I think it's just keeping that mental focus and preparation. And what does the plan look like? I don't know because the road is winding and we can't really
Yeah.
see. Just think of it's like a foggy day and you can't really see too far ahead of you. But just being
Mhm.
ready for everything. Yeah, I could probably do a whole talk about this stuff once you get me. This is why I don't do a lot of talking, man. Because once I get going, I don't stop. Um, but no, it's a lot of that, and I think the big thing is just sharing with coaches, like taking ideas from you, sharing ideas with you. And I think the more that our coaching fraternity talks and shares, the more we talk to athletes, the more we can stay on top of this and really figure out what do our athletes need, right? Um,
Yeah.
so that's my big thing is just sharing and having these talks and wanting to reach out and talk to people. And I've been really fortunate. This whole idea of having conversations. I think you're my fourth or fifth video that I've recorded, and being able to talk to elite athletes or talk to coaches and talk to people, it's giving me ideas and giving me a roadmap of where to go because I'm hearing what people are saying, and I think I'm using this to my advantage in the sense that I'm really getting to hear from different people in different areas of swimming that are going to help me plot a course that'll benefit my athletes. And hopefully, with these videos and everyone hearing this, it help everybody in Canada plot a course. Because
Yeah.
I'd love nothing more than for us to show up in this world unifying event in Tokyo in 2021 and Canadians being so well prepared and so unified that we get up and we put on a heck of a performance. Like that's my dream vision of what turns out to be, in, I don't know, 15, 16 months from now when we finally get a run at this. So, yeah, a little bit long winded on the answer, but that's kind of the whole thing. And,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, man, I'm thinking about this stuff every day. My brain doesn't stop, unfortunately. It's a bit of a curse. Um, yeah, I really appreciate you doing this and taking the time to have this conversation and share a story. And I really wish you and your family and all of your athletes nothing but good health. And hopefully you can get back at it really quickly. And I will say if there's anything that I can do personally to help you guys, and I think sharing ideas and things like that is important. But yeah, man, I just really appreciate you doing this and taking the time to share your story a little bit and share what you guys are going through over there.
It's
That's
been fun, and yeah, I appreciate the chat. I think we want to keep doing this. We can do it off camera, on camera,
yeah,
and you know, like you said, it's been invaluable. You've already shared a lot of things with me last week, and give me a lot of food for thought moving forward. And that's what it's all about. You're a great resource, and I appreciate it. So, best of luck to yourself and your family, and say hi to everyone at Chena.
will
It'll be
do.
great to see you all again on the pool deck someday.
Yeah, hopefully sooner rather than later, right?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, I will say, keep reaching out to different coaches. Let's start something. Let's keep talking to each other and reaching out and sharing ideas, and let's help each other get through this. So, as a swimming nation, we can keep moving forward in this tough time, right?
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, all the best. Take care of yourself, and we'll talk to you again. I know we'll talk a lot off camera and stuff like that, but thank you for doing this, and all the best with everything.
Cheers, Patrick. All
All
the
right.
best.
Take care.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye.